Time is running out. DailyWire Plus is 50% off, but not for much longer. Get a full year of uncensored shows, exclusive series, documentaries, and more, all at half price. Go to dailywire.com/cyberweek before it is too late. With Defense Secretary nominee Pete Hegseth on the ropes, Democrats are already setting their sights on taking down Tulsi Gabbard, with dozens of intelligence officials coming out warning of her allegiance to foreign powers. Seems to me I've heard this song before. I'm Michael Knowles. It's The Michael Knowles Show. Welcome back to the show. A woman has issued a casting call for fellas because she is endeavoring to bed 1,000 men within the span of 24 hours. We will get to every aspect of that should be illegal. First, though, I want to talk to you about Armra. Go to tryarmra.com/Knowles. There's a lot of talk these days about getting back to basics, whether it's in politics, culture, or even health. Speaking of getting back to basics, I want to tell you about Armra colostrum. Colostrum is not some newfangled health fad. It's probably the oldest health fad in the world. It is nature's original superfood containing over 400 bioactive nutrients that your body needs to thrive. Armra has found a way to harness this incredible substance in its purest, most potent form. I have a little baby at home, and I've got 3 kids under 4, so I have seen colostrum in action. And it is just like liquid gold. What makes Armra different is their proprietary cold chain biopotent pasteurization technology. Unlike other supplements that lose their potency through processing, Armra preserves all those crucial nutrients in their most bioavailable form, all sourced from sustainably grass-fed cows on American family farms. Right now, go to tryarmra.com/Knowles, TRYARMRA.com/Knowles, KNWLES. Get 15% off your first order. The libs and the squishes are coming for Pete Hegseth. They want that man to go down. They do not want to see him at the Pentagon. This goes back to the moment that his candidacy was announced. There was a big Politico piece that said that defense industry lobbyists didn't like him, which is frankly one of the great recommendations of Pete Hegseth's nomination. Then, of course, the Democrats were all upset about him. Most Republicans really like the guy. He obviously has a great record of service in the military. He also has degrees from Princeton and Harvard, Kennedy School of Public Policy, so he checks off all those boxes. Very good communicator on TV. However, there are a few holdouts right now, including one senator who reportedly wants the job for herself. In any case, Pete is fighting back, as he demonstrated yesterday.
I'm proud of what I fought for. I'm not going to back down from them one bit. I will answer all of these senators' questions, but this will not be a process tried in the media. I don't answer to anyone in this group, none of you, not to that camera at all. I answer to President Trump, who received 76 million votes on behalf and a mandate for change. I answer to the 100 senators who are part of this process and those in the committee. And I answer to my Lord and Savior and my wife and my family. I'm proud to be here. And as long as Donald Trump wants me in this fight, I'm going to be standing right here in this fight, fighting to bring our Pentagon back to what it needs to be.
Good answer. I think that will be impressive down in Palm Beach. I think that's the kind of thing President Trump loves to see. That's the kind of thing Republican senators love to see, too. You know, I understand that not every nominee is going to get through in a contentious process, especially when there's fighting going on, not just between the Republicans and the Democrats, but even more importantly, within the Republican Party. Frankly, even within the MAGA movement, even down at Palm Beach, there are factions within the Trump campaign fighting and vying for influence and settling scores. So I get it. But there is a real risk here if Pete Hegseth goes down. Matt Gaetz already went down. He didn't have the votes. He didn't have anything close to the votes. So he went down. In a way, it benefited him because it got him out of Congress before a damaging ethics report was released. But in any case, that put a little blood in the water on these nominations. Now, the Democrats are trying to pounce on that like sharks. They're just starting to show up. They're circling the boat. Ooh, is Hegseth going to go down too? Ooh, Hegseth's been married multiple times. Ooh, Hegseth used to be kind of a Casanova. Ooh, now they're making crazy accusations against him. They're saying because he had a whiskey during a film shoot in which whiskey was a prop and a set piece, that he's somehow, like a full-blown alcoholic or something. The guy did morning TV for how many years? No one ever saw him drunk on TV once. Just kind of throwing everything at him. They're going to throw the kitchen sink at him. And they're going to be some squishes who go soft, and they're going to be cynical Republicans who don't want him in that position because maybe they want that position for themselves. Maybe they want that position for one of their allies. Whatever the reason, though, if Hegseth goes down, you can say goodbye to Bobby Kennedy at HHS. If Hegseth goes down, say goodbye to Tulsi Gabbard as the Director of National Intelligence. I was talking about this with Megyn Kelly yesterday. Megyn made the point that if they're going to take Pete Hegseth down because he was a little bit of a Casanova, well, Bobby Kennedy makes Pete Hegseth look like a priest, okay? Bobby Kennedy has a far longer and far more checkered romantic history. So he's done. His nomination's done then, too. They're already going after Tulsi Gabbard. In fact, this was, how much I hate to brag. Nostradamus strikes again. Yesterday on Megyn Kelly's show, I broke a personal record for the quickest that a prediction that I have made has ever come true. I was chatting with Megyn about this very topic, and I said this. The letter is already being written. 51 former and present intelligence officials know that Tulsi Gabbard is a secret KGB agent and the leader of ISIS. And we have proof because this whole charge came to us first from Hillary Clinton. People forget that. This whole Tulsi's a Russian asset nonsense. That was just a line from Hillary Clinton in 2020. It's totally, I suppose the Russia hoax against Trump was also a line from Hillary Clinton in 2016 when she was, ironically enough, colluding with the Russians to get that Steele dossier. So it's just such bunk, Megyn, and it's not going to stop. By the way, it's not going to stop with Tulsi Gabbard. Whoever the next person they put up, that person's going to have a whole dossier of mostly nonsense thrown at them, too. But then, not 1 hour after I made that prediction on Megyn Kelly's show, we got this from dozens of intelligence officials, past and present, to Chuck Schumer, current leader of the Senate, and John Thune, the incoming leader of the Senate. As senior national security professionals who have served in both Republican and Democratic administrations, we welcome President-elect's intention to nominate Marco Rubio. They love Rubio. They love Elise Stefanik. They love the more moderate nominations from Trump. However, we are alarmed by the announcement that the president-elect intends to nominate Tulsi Gabbard to be Director of National Intelligence. Then they go on and on to talk about how much she loves the Russians and the Syrians and the dictators. I am impressed with my own prescience. I said, the letter is currently being written. And then about an hour later, the letter comes out. They may have been writing this letter while Megyn and I were speaking. Maybe they watched the Megyn Kelly show. I don't know what it is. In any case, only proves the point. It's not just a point about Tulsi. It really goes all the way back to Pete. You want to get rid of Matt Gaetz? Okay, I get it. He had a lot of baggage that he wasn't going to come anywhere close to the threshold of votes needed in the Senate. Here, though, it looks like Pete is pretty close. Right now, it looks like the holdouts are who? Lindsey Graham reportedly doesn't like him. Mitch McConnell reportedly doesn't like him. Murkowski and Collins, unsurprisingly, liberal Republicans. Joni Ernst, there is some reporting that Joni Ernst might be vying for the defense secretary position herself. Okay, so now we're talking about people who just have little quibbles with, I don't know, Pete's not my favorite choice, or, I don't know, maybe I want that job for me. I would just issue this little warning to any Republican senators who want to play games about Pete Hegseth. I don't think Republican primary voters are going to take very kindly to Republican senators who giddily vote for Joe Biden's defense secretary nominees, giddily vote for Lloyd Austin, who has not been a good defense secretary, who disappeared for 3 days, didn't even tell the president, who giddily vote for the Democrat nominees, but refuse to give President Trump, their own party's president, his nominees. I don't think they're going to. Now, you might say our Republican primary voters, they have a short memory. Yeah, maybe. But Charlie Kirk's pretty good at getting out the vote, it seems. Guys like Scott Pressler, pretty good at getting out the vote. Even more important than those guys, the richest man in the world has recently become very active in promoting President Trump's agenda. And the richest man in the world, Elon Musk, has demonstrated a long memory and strong follow-through. So my message to any GOP senators who think they're going to play games here and who want to tank not just the defense secretary nomination, but potentially all of President Trump's actual shake-up, semi-controversial, populist nominations, tread carefully. That's my only warning to them. Enough on that point. Speaking of threats to our government, I want to first focus on threats to your privacy, and that would be ExpressVPN. Right now, go to expressvpn.com/Knowles. You know that free Wi-Fi at your local coffee shop or the guest network at hotels and airports? Well, every time you connect to those networks, you are essentially broadcasting your personal information to anyone who wants to listen in. With some basic hardware, even a tech-savvy 12-year-old like Professor Jacob could potentially access your passwords, banking details, and credit card info. That is why I use ExpressVPN when I connect to public Wi-Fi. It creates an encrypted tunnel between your device and the internet that is so secure, it would take a supercomputer over 1 billion years to crack. It's not just theoretical protection. I rely on it when I travel for work. In fact, I just rely on it all the time. It's really, really simple. I don't want people getting in there with my financial information, into my emails, into my texts. You use ExpressVPN, you click that button. Even for me, a Luddite, it's just so simple, I don't need to think about it again. Right now, take advantage of ExpressVPN's Black Friday, Cyber Monday sale. You can get the absolute best VPN deal you will find all year. ExpressVPN.com/Knowles. Get 4 extra months with the 12-month plan or 6 extra months with the 24-month plan. If you're like me, you should get the 24-month plan, and then you don't have to think about it for 2 years. ExpressVPN.com/Knowles, Canada BYS. Get an extra 4 or even 6 months free of ExpressVPN. I've got to direct you to thecandleclub.com. You know I sell you many combustibles. You have your Mayflower cigars. If you want your Mayflower cigars, you also want your Wise Man candles. If you want your yes or no game, if you want your yes or no expansion packs, if you want your Mayflower candles, if you want your signed Reasons to Vote for Democrats book, if you want your signed Speechless book, if you want it by Christmas, thank you, you have to order it by next week. Do not wait. Do not say I didn't tell you so. The deadline for arrival by Christmas is coming very quickly. If I were you, I would order today or tomorrow. Get it done now. thecandleclub.com, dailywire.com/shop. You know all the websites. Speaking of threats to our government, some transvestites decided to hold an insurrection at the Capitol yesterday. You didn't hear about this because, like the vast majority of insurrections that have taken place at the U.S. Capitol over U.S. history, this was from the left, not from the right. And it was far more egregious, if you ask me, than anything the Horn Hat people did on January 6th. Because in this case, a bunch of transvestites decided to barge into the women's bathroom on Capitol Hill.
Johnson, Nancy Mace. Our bodies are no debate. Our bodies are no debate. Speaker Johnson, Nancy Mace. Speaker Johnson, Nancy Mace. Our agendas are no debate. Our agendas are no debate. Hey, hey. Hey, hey.
All right, I think I've heard enough of this. These people, they don't have all that much to say, so they just repeat their slogans. One of the people who barged into the women's room is Bradley Manning, who is a criminal who had his sentence commuted by Barack Obama, and now he thinks that he's a woman and he calls himself Chelsea. I'm not speaking with hyperbole when I say this is more serious, more egregious than anything the Horn Hat people did. Because, well, some of the Capitol Hill eccentrics from January 6th were a little untoward and a little uncivilized, messing up papers on desks and moving lecterns and things like that. These people are committing what would have been considered a crime until 5 minutes ago, a pretty serious crime. They're fellas barging into women in various states of undress in their bathrooms. Those are rooms that men are in principle, not permitted to go into. But the who run our government have decided to force women to be in various states of undress, surrounded by men. This is classic stuff. Deeply unjust, so we should stop it. We should arrest these people. Obviously, we should enforce the law and protections for women. However, from a political perspective, I think this is pretty good. I think the transgender issue plays perfectly for Republicans. And the Democrats can't pull away from it. Some reasonable, semi-reasonable Democrats want to pull away from the trans issue because they realize it cost them Virginia in the Glenn Youngkin race. It hurt them in Florida. It hurt them in the presidential election. They realize it's a really bad look. But they can't pull away from it. That's the problem. In some ways, the far left radical Dems who want to keep pushing transgenderism and transing the kids, in some ways they're actually more reasonable than the moderate Dems who don't want to go all the way with transgenderism. And the reason is that transgenderism follows naturally from the premises that the Democrats have been talking about for half a century. Going back to feminism, at least, to say that if a man and a woman are practically the same, then what follows from that is the gay rights movement. What follows from that is so-called gay marriage, inevitably. And what follows from that is transgenderism. And what follows from that is transing the kids. If men and women are really the same, indiscernible, interchangeable, then that's true for everyone, including adults, including little kids. It's true when it comes to marriage. It's true when it comes to the law. It's true when it comes to biology. Now, most people find this very off-putting. There are some people, though, who for whatever clouding of their intellect, they really buy into it. And I think another reason that people are really embracing not only transgenderism, but transing the kids is because it makes them feel special, because it makes them feel interesting. And you don't have to take my word for it. There was a mother of a so-called trans child who had this to say in Washington, D.C., not far from the Supreme Court, as the oral arguments were being heard in the case of U.S. versus Skirmetti.
I think the greatest gift of my life is to have kids. And to have a transgender child has made me so much more interesting, so much more wise.
That sums it up. That woman accidentally revealed, I think, what's at the heart of a lot of the trans kids movement. Kids, by definition, can't consent to things. Decisions are made for kids by their parents. Kids are very impressionable. A little look on your face, a little raising of your eyebrow, your kids are going to notice that. They're going to absorb that. They're going to react to that. Anyone who's ever had kids knows this is true. Toddlers, they mimic everything that you do, every thought that enters into your head. And so now it is socially beneficial. There is a social cachet to having a trans kid. As that woman says, it just made me so much more interesting. This is why the Hollywood celebrities all have like 50 trans kids. That's weird. Statistically, that wouldn't make any sense. But this is a continuation. Back in the 90s and 2000s, it carried social cachet to have a gay kid. So you had a flurry of gay kids, especially in the coasts and in liberal and affluent areas. You saw this flourish in the 90s and 2000s. There was no such thing as a trans kid in the 90s. There was certainly no such thing as a trans kid in the 80s or the 70s. Now you see a lot of trans kids. You're seeing 30% of Gen Z identifying as LGBTQ, up orders of magnitude in just a matter of a few decades. Why does that happen? Either it's because they're putting something in the water, turning the frogs, which in part is true, or it's because parents, whether through ignorance or through their own perverse desires and envy of the interesting aspects of other people, they're leading their kids into this. They're affirming them, and maybe they're even planting the seeds of those by raising children in a liberal environment and establishing for them the first principle that a man really can be a woman. But hey, it makes them so much more interesting. It makes them seem so much more wise. Speaking of children, David Hogg. You remember David Hogg? David Hogg is this kid who was present at the Parkland school when there was a school shooting, and he really capitalized on it, and he made himself a celebrity off of this tragedy that happened at his school. Now he's, I think, 52 or something. He's not quite, but he's in his mid-20s. And David Hogg, I think he was accepted to Harvard just because he got on CNN a lot after this shooting. He has not demonstrated much academic or intellectual acumen or even the ability to spell words, but he got into Harvard. And it's once you're into these schools, it's very easy to graduate. So I guess he graduated, and now he's still getting himself on CNN all the time. And he wants to run for the leadership of the Democrat Party.
David, good morning. I'm so grateful to have you.
Good morning. Happy to be here.
So tell us a little bit about this. Are you thinking about running for this leadership post, and why?
Well, honestly, I'm considering it because I think that, obviously, I think we need a new generation in the DNC. If this election has taught us nothing else, I think we need an intergenerational coalition as a party. But I've spent the past 2 years or so traveling around the country, working to elect young people and talking to everyday people, knocking on doors in every swing state that you can imagine, and some very red states as well, from starting out in Alabama to places like Texas and Virginia and everywhere in between. And the thing that I've realized more than anything is that we have a number of problems in the party, but I think the main one overall is that we would rather live in a comfortable delusion than an uncomfortable reality. And I think what the party needs to do is open its eyes and take its fingers out of its ears, basically.
When you say delusion, what is the delusion?
I think it's that we can just surround ourselves with people that agree with us a lot of the time in terms of the party leadership and also within the party itself, and think that's just who we need to be talking to constantly.
Yeah. So because David Hogg thinks that the Democrats need to be less elitist, less caught up in their own bubble, they're more in touch with the common man. That's why David Hogg should be leading the Democrat Party. One of the most radical, strident, condescending, insulting, apparently arrogant Democrats on the public scene. That guy should be leading the party. He has my endorsement. I would like to take this opportunity. I 100% support David Hogg for chairman of the Democrat National Committee. I would be happy to donate to his campaign. Please let me know where I should send my check. Please let me know if there are any maximum contribution limits. I hope there aren't. Please let me know. I think that would be just marvelous. Now, I want to talk to you about Lumen. Go to lumen.me, use code Knowles. It is tough to prioritize your health, especially if you're not sure where to start. However, it's not just about making a decision. It's about making a commitment to a better quality of life. It's about habits. That's why I love Lumen. Lumen is such a great tool. It is a handheld metabolic coach. Even for me, I am a total Luddite. It's so simple. I can wake up in the morning and breathe right into my Lumen, and it will tell me everything that's going on with my metabolism, whether I'm burning mostly fats or carbs, takes my unique metabolic data, crafts a personalized nutrition plan for that day tailored to my body's needs and goals. And look, I can follow that nutrition plan. I can deviate from that nutrition plan if I have some event going on, but I can do it. I can know exactly what's going to be best for me. You breathe in, that's all it takes. You breathe right into it before and after workouts and meals, gain real-time insights into your body's metabolic response. Lumen will provide you with actionable tips to help you stay on top of your health game. If you want to take the next step in improving your health this Christmas season, go to lumen.me/Knowles, Knowles. Get 15% off your Lumen, LUMEN.ME. Use code Knowles for 15% off your purchase. Thank you, Lumen, for sponsoring this episode. My favorite comment yesterday is from Georgia Hickman, M40, who says, great video. I'm a 15-year-old girl, and I watch it every night while I do the dishes. Oh, thank you. I love that we reach the Utes. You know, I go out to events sometimes and I'll meet, nice families, and there'll be kids 11 years old who come up. They say, hi, Mr. Knowles, I really like watching your show. I think, all right, we're getting into the mind of the Utes. However, Georgia says, I also love the Christmas decorations. They made my day. All right, well, I have to correct you, Georgia. Those are Advent decorations, because I would certainly never cotton to Christmas decorations before Christmas. It's not Christmas yet. Christmas will occur. Then we'll have 12 days of Christmas. But for now, it's Advent. So when I saw what the producers did to my studio, I said, oh, those are lovely Advent decorations. That's great. And thank you for watching the show. Okay, turning now to bad ideas. Perhaps the younger viewers right now can plug their ears up, though I'll try to speak diplomatically about this. There is a lady who is involved in a certain obscene and lascivious industry who is currently issued a casting call for 1,000 men whom she intends to bed within the span of 24 hours. Apparently, in the betting markets, people are taking odds on how many she'll get to. This woman has apparently already, during one of her trial runs, made it over 100 men in one day. She next says she is going to endeavor to work up to 300 men. Then eventually she'll go for 1,000 to break the world record. I believe the world record is 919 men. Ugh. Little palate cleanser after that series of facts. I did the math. It is possible. Even if you want to build in a little buffer, I don't know, to eat lunch or something, maybe 7 hours potentially to sleep, or just because of people taking a moment or two to reset themselves or whatever, it's about a fella per minute for an entire day. Then you get an extra 7 hours to work with as buffer. Pretty gross. Now, I was trying to think of all the ways in which this obviously should be illegal or otherwise circumscribed by the culture and the law. One, prostitution should be illegal. I'm not saying that it has to be completely banished everywhere and totally enforced at all times. And the reason I'm not saying that is an insight of St. Thomas Aquinas. Even St. Thomas Aquinas says that, following St. Augustine, that you don't necessarily want to totally obliterate prostitution in a society. Prostitution exists in every society. And one of the reasons you don't want to totally obliterate it is that not everyone is equally advanced in virtue. And in some cases, if we don't meet people where they are, they'll just crack. So you can't have unrealistically high ideals and standards and norms in a society, especially a society as decadent as ours, lest the society become convulsed with lust and become even worse. So there's a place for prudence here. However, pretty clearly to me, and prostitution need to be severely curtailed. The libs and the libertarians are arguing that it should be liberalized. Both of those should be liberalized or decriminalized. Seems to me, if you got some young girl, how old is that girl? She looks like she's 22 or something, trying to bet 1,000 guys in one day. That would be an example of we need to curtail these things. On the consumption side and on the production side, we need to arrest pimps. We were doing this relatively recently. George W. Bush, at the end of his administration, arrested and imprisoned for obscenity. So it can happen. Then there obviously ought to be public health ordinances against this. You should not be able to bed 1,000 people in a day. That's so profoundly disgusting and should be illegal. So, but that might infringe on people's rights to have orgies and thruples and quadruples. That's true. But we would have had laws against all of these things for most of American history. Before the sexual revolution, no one would have thought that anyone has a right to that. So that should be illegal. You're not allowed to go to Granny's funeral during COVID. You have to stand 6 feet away and you have to cancel Christmas. But this lady's allowed to bag 1,000 fellas? Doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me. Then, something tells me that woman doesn't have a great relationship with her father. We should probably discourage divorce. We should probably encourage people getting married. We should probably discourage contraception, which promotes a promiscuous culture of hookups and sterility and selfish relations between the sexes, really just using the opposite sex for one's own immediate gratification. That seems like a good idea. Sometimes you'll hear the libs and the libertarians say, well, how does my personal behavior affect you? As if to say, hey, how does the complete degradation of society and the upending of mores and the changing of language and the way we even understand the world affect you? It affects me because I'm a citizen and we live in society and I'm a human being. It affects me because this is how human beings have always interacted. And we're not just atoms, we're floating in the ether. We're not just coconuts that fell out of the coconut tree, to quote Kamala Harris. So even that, if you had a culture which discouraged divorce, which discouraged promiscuity, which discouraged abortion, one of the greatest evils in the world, because it tells you not to have any care for your children. If a mother can kill her own child, as Mother Teresa tells us, then there's no limit to what anyone can do to anyone. If you just had that, would this woman really be doing this? You listen to any interview with any person, they never have good relationships with their parents. Their parents are almost always divorced. So that the social pathology of divorce lies at the heart of this too. You can't really disconnect these things. And sterility also. If we had a culture that recognized the natural consequences of actions, if we had a culture that recognized telos and the purpose of things, the leftist ears tumbler is for my leftist ears. The microphone is to communicate my mellifluous voice to you. Sex is for the procreation of children. If we had this, then the woman wouldn't get anywhere near 1,000 fellas because she'd wind up pregnant, at least within the first few. We just wouldn't view sex in the way that we view it today. It's not just that the should be illegal. That part of it is, yes, we should severely circumscribe. But there were so many deeper issues, and they're inseparable one from another. And the problems have come about because of the cultural and sexual revolution in particular. And then we look like the weirdos when we say, hey, maybe there are going to be negative consequences to living out of accord with reality. Now, speaking of lascivious performers, the Call Her Daddy podcast is mocking Kamala Harris for, according to election forums, spending $100,000 to be interviewed by the Call Her Daddy podcast.
There's a little bit of controversy about that podcast because you did.
Oh.
Do you know about this?
No, what?
Because in D.C., this interview happened in D.C.
Yeah.
In a hotel.
Yeah, not in a hotel. It was like a random house.
It was like a random house. But apparently, you can tell me, they spent, meaning the Harris campaign spent like $100,000.
I did see
you
that.
know about this?
It's hilarious.
To build the studio.
Yeah, that's not true.
Not true. To make it look like it was the studio that you used in L.A.
My studio that is gorgeous in Los Angeles doesn't even cost six figures. So I don't know how cardboard walls could cost six figures, but
do you think they did that? I mean, you saw it.
Absolutely not. With love to them. Oh my God, it was gorgeous, but it wasn't that nice. It wasn't like gorgeous marble. No, that was not six figures.
Okay, now this woman is saying, Kamala Harris's election forms say that she spent six figures on this set, but how on earth could she have done that? My nice set, I've maybe the nicest set in media. I'm not to brag, I didn't have very much to do with it, but I have a really, really nice set with all sorts of layers and beautiful design and pretty high quality materials, and it didn't cost $100,000. So she's saying, how on earth could this temporary cardboard set that Kamala made cost $100,000? What a waste of money. There's no way. Right, that's the point. A lot of these contributions that you're seeing come up on Kamala's forms that put her $20 million in the hole, that blew over $1 billion, whatever it cost, that was graft, that was payoffs, that was corruption. I'm not accusing the Call Her Daddy podcast of taking a payoff. This woman is feigning ignorance here, or maybe she really is ignorant. I don't know. How on earth could she have racked up that kind of a bill? That didn't cost that. But what about Oprah? Remember, Kamala Harris did the same thing to Oprah. She did an interview with Oprah, and it was a big scandal for Oprah because Oprah's production company took $1 million from Kamala Harris. What did she take a bribe? No. Oprah said no, it was to build the set. It was to, set the cameras. It was because the production people had to be paid. They had to be paid $1 million for a temporary set? No, that was a payoff. That was a way of laundering money in and buying support. The clearest example of this in the media was when Kamala Harris paid $500,000 to Al Sharpton. Al Sharpton, who's been openly, transparently on the take for decades. Al Sharpton gets hundreds of $1,000s from Kamala Harris, and then he plays a little birthday message from her on his show. And then he says nice things about her. And then he gets some more money, and then he conducts a fawning interview with Kamala Harris. Apparently, According to news reports, even the other MSNBC hosts are a little miffed that Al Sharpton got $500,000 from Kamala. What was it? Was it for production costs? Was it because Kamala all of a sudden just really cares out of the goodness of her heart to support the National Action Network, which is Al Sharpton's slush fund? No, it was a payoff. It was corruption, and it just didn't work. That's it. That's how she ended up $20 million in the hole. She bribed a ton of people, but she didn't bribe the right people. She didn't bribe them in the right way. It didn't work. And now she's caught holding this bag. I guess she's holding an empty bag, and she has to explain $500,000 here, $100,000 here, $1 million here. And she can't quite explain it because the only answer is either total incompetence, which I didn't even think it was, or corruption. And if you've ever thought about joining DailyWire Plus, now is the time. Right now, new annual memberships are 50% off. Best deal of the year. That is 1 full year of uncensored daily shows with limited ads, groundbreaking documentaries, hit movies like Am I Racist?, Jordan Peterson's Gospel series, all sorts of entertainment, the Bent Key app, the Kids app, you get everything. Go to DailyWire Plus right now, save 50%. Finally, it's time for my favorite part of the week, the Mailbag, which is sponsored by Pure Talk. Go to puretalk.com/Knowles today. Get an additional 50% off your first month. Take it away.
Hi, Michael. I'm a senior in high school, and I recently shared with my mother that I'm a conservative and voted for Donald Trump. My mother, being a lesbian Democrat and an avid listener of MSNBC, feels that my views contradict everything that she stands for. Additionally, I've been exploring the idea of converting to Catholicism from Presbyterianism, but she has strongly opposed this as well, simply because nobody in our family has been Catholic. Except, of course, my biological father, of which I have no idea who he is, because I was conceived via artificial insemination. How can I stay true to my political and religious beliefs while still honoring and respecting my mother and her values? Thanks for answering, Philip.
Tough situation you're in, kid. I feel for you. And a good question that you're asking. Say, how can I still honor my mother? You do have to honor your mother, even though she has manifestly made poor choices that have hurt you. Now she made the choice to give you life, which was aiming at a good, just as all actions are aiming at some good, real or imagined. But the way in which she did it has harmed you. For instance, depriving you of knowing your natural father, etc. So you're in a tough situation because what you're essentially saying, the reason your mother is understandably reacting against you voting for Trump, just like most Americans did, why your mother is reacting against you considering conversion to Catholicism, because you're following your lights and your conscience and what you believe to be clear in Scripture and the 2,000-year history of the church, moving away from a Calvinist theology toward a more traditional and some would say Orthodox theology, is she's saying you're rejecting everything I've tried to teach you. Maybe you're rejecting me. That's why she's reacting so negatively against it, ultimately. And so I think what you need to make clear to your mother is, I'm not rejecting you. I don't agree with you on certain ethical matters, moral matters, theological matters, but it's not because it's not that I don't like you, Mom. I recognize that the actions that you have taken were aiming at some good. All action is aiming at some good. It's just sometimes our intellects are clouded, our wills are distorted, and so the goods that you were aiming at sometimes are a little bit off. They're a little off kilter, okay? And so I'm not judging you or your intentions. I'm grateful for everything you've given me. Love you to death, Mom. But I just think you're a little wrong about this. And we're all a little bit wrong sometimes. And maybe I can even get you to see things my way. And who knows, maybe your mother will cease to believe certain things about her own identity. And who knows, maybe your mother will end up Catholic. But you've got to make clear from the beginning, you're not rejecting your mother. You're having a disagreement because sometimes people are led astray. But it doesn't mean they weren't aiming at some good. It just means, like all of us sometimes, people go a little off the path. Next one.
Conservatives often argue about the relationship between politics and culture, and you have thankfully been able to provide more detail to this discussion. However, I think there's even more detail that I'm not hearing anyone acknowledge, namely the fact that not all cultural formats create the same impact. For example, the DailyWire is putting out great content in the realm of feature-length films, but feature films are a commercial format, and as such, respond to culture more often than creating it. If we want to create it, in my opinion, we should be involved in the high arts, because the arts create the culture that trickles down to entertainment. We should be funding institutions that promote Shakespeare, Beethoven, Duke Ellington, and current artists that aim to reinvigorate traditional aesthetic standards. This seems like an obvious tactic for conservatives, but I haven't heard of many that have interest in it. I understand the fear presented by the apparent lack of demand, but that doesn't stop liberals from doing it, and although conservatism has slowly started to find its way into mainstream content, the left still control the high arts with absolutely no challenge. What are your thoughts?
Well, the one problem with your diagnosis is that you point to Shakespeare and Duke Ellington as examples of high non-commercial art. But Shakespeare and Duke Ellington were commercially viable artists. People bought tickets to Shakespeare's plays. He was a very popular artist. Duke Ellington, one of the most popular musicians of the 20th century. So I think that your contrast between commercial art and high art is maybe there's a little bit of a blurrier middle ground there than you're admitting. But broadly speaking, I do agree that we ought to focus on the high arts. I think that's really important. We can do that through political power. One great example of this from the 20th century is Jackson Pollock, who's a nonsense painter. You know, he just splatters paint on a canvas, and anyone can do it. Who was it? Norman, who's the famous, I can't believe his name escapes me right now, the great mid-century Americana painter, Norman, it'll drive me crazy and someone will correct me in the chat. But anyway, he has a great painting called The Connoisseur, which is a painting of a man holding his fedora behind him, wearing a suit and tie, staring up at a Jackson Pollock painting. And what he's proving is that anyone can do the Jackson Pollock painting, and he, on top of that, can do real painting as well. But so how did Jackson Pollock become such a big deal? In part, it was because the CIA backed him, because the federal government during the Cold War used modern art, specifically the art of Jackson Pollock, as a way to subvert the Soviet Union. The modern art is so deeply subversive that they smuggled it in like a weapon of mass destruction into communist countries. So I use that example not just to criticize the CIA or anything, but actually to point to a lesson for us, which is that we can use the government, perhaps even things like the National Endowment for the Arts or whatever, to fund not just disgusting, degraded works of pseudo-art or anti-art, but to actually fund good art. And this is something the Trump administration could do. It would be in line with his executive order from the first term to make federal buildings beautiful again, to promote classical architecture in federal buildings. We could do that with high art as well. The libertarians will hate that because they will prefer commercial art. But of course, you think of some of the great masters of the Renaissance or the late Middle Ages. They were not commercial artists. They had patrons, and their patrons, often the church, would fund really good art. So it actually did come from a central authority or from a handful of rich people who were not seeking to make a profit. And I think that's all a really good thing. And we can use the government for that end, and maybe we should, as you suggest. Next question. Norman Rockwell. I can't believe Rockwell, one of the most famous popular painters in American history. It's been a long week, folks. Next one.
Hey, Michael. I wanted to get your thoughts on the philosophy of musical liturgy. We have discussed this in a previous mailbag a long time ago, but recently this came up in a discussion between me and one of the music directors at my church. We started out with the agreement that we need to get more young people to come back into the church, but my philosophy is that we should have people be excited about coming to church, and my generation looks more into lively forms of media as opposed to the traditional monotone forms of music that come from the church. My music director argues that we should not stray from tradition and sing traditional hymns with just an organist and a cantor. However, in my experience, I encourage the congregation to clap along to the music and sing more modern tunes while also not drawing attention away from the ceremony, similar to something you would see in Sister Act, which is the only thing I will say Whoopi Goldberg did well in her dumpster fire of a career. And in the end, we have people coming up to us afterwards and saying how they love the music and look forward to it every week. So my question to you is, if we are certain that traditional styles of hymns will bring in more people to the church, then why are the pews still empty? If you are ever in my neck of the woods, I would love to see you, Mr. Davies, and Professor Jacob at a Mass, followed by a cigar. Thanks.
A really good question. I can't tell. Since you say it's a Mass, I think you might be Catholic here, though you might be referring to an Episcopalian Mass service or something else like that, especially if you're mentioning all the happy clappy stuff. The difference, though, when Protestant friends have brought this up to me, is many people, especially Protestants, view the organ as being the traditional kind of hymn. But I, being a Catholic, view the organ as actually relatively modern, because the Catholic Church is 2,000 years old. And so I view the traditional form of singing in the liturgy as being Gregorian chant. All monophonic. Sometimes in a missa cantata it can be polyphonic, but still it's, asperges me domine sopo et mundabor. And it's wonderful variation in this throughout the liturgical year. But I find that your observation to be false. You say that the pews are filling up in the really modern happy clappy liturgies, not in the old traditional ones. That's not my experience, at least as a Catholic. The ones with the sappy 1970s, pop songs, the ballads, those parishes have like 3 people in them, and they're all over the age of 80. If you want to find young people, if you want to find the pews filled, it's at the traditional Latin masses with the Gregorian chant, where everything's packed to the gills. So I don't know that that's true. Perhaps in the Protestant traditions, I think you get a little bit more of young people wanting to go to rock concert kinds of services. So I'm not really even weighing in on that. Just in my experience, for people who want to go to the Mass and who want a liturgy, I don't know. I think that the real traditional stuff is more compelling, and it's for one reason. That when you're chanting, it's not about you. It's not about your emotion. Plato talks about this, that music, more than any other art, just cuts right to the soul. It bypasses reason, and it can lead you astray as a result of that. This is why I think the gospel readings ought to be chanted, because it takes the personality out of it. I don't go to Mass for the personality of individuals. I don't go to Mass to express my individuality. I don't go to Mass to experience more of the world. I go to Mass for the contrast and the perfection of the world. I go to Mass to focus on God, not on myself. And so I don't need a tambourine to do that. In fact, a tambourine gets in my way. Today is Fake Headline Friday. The rest of the show continues now. You do not want to miss it. Become a member. Use code Knowles, Canada WLAS, to check out for 2 months free on all annual plans.